My name is Dr. Stephen Jones. As an organizational psychologist and executive coach, I love to study what allows people to bring out the best in themselves and others. So join me as I welcome top leaders to uncover the future of leadership. Welcome to the LeaderSHYFT Podcast, where top leaders reveal insights earned, wisdom gained, and transformational moments that have defined and redefined their leadership. I'm your host, Dr. Stephen Jones, and I am so excited today. We have a phenomenal guest. I'm going to say it again, y'all. Phenomenal guest, Dr. Kimberly White-Smith. Dr. White-Smith is a transformative leader who drives innovation and equity in education, a graduate school dean, and a global force working to ensure academic justice for Black, Indigenous, queer, Latinx, and neurodivergent students. In this podcast, Dr. White-Smith and I will strive to uncover a few of the secrets of the future of effective leadership. Welcome to the podcast, Dean White-Smith.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So excited and honored to have you big time. Let me tell you a little bit more about who we have in the podcast studio today, y'all. You're going to want to listen up. Okay. So, Dr. Kimberly White-Smith was born and raised in Inglewood, California, also known as South Central LA. She serves as Dean and Professor at the University of San Diego's School of Leadership and Education Science. She also serves as the Vice President of the American Educational Research Association, Division K, Teaching and Teacher Education. With over 30 years of experience, Dr. White-Smith has advanced inclusive, high-impact teaching practices and worked alongside marginalized and economically oppressed communities to expand educational excellence and access. The Black Ingenious Initiative, also called BIGGIE, was created by Dr. Kimberly White-Smith and our good friend Pam Gray Payton as to offer resources for San Diego County's Black scholars and youth of all races who face similar barriers to academic success, as well as their families and educators. Right next to BIGGIE is the Center for Embodied Equity and Neurodiversity, also known as SEEN. Why? Because our students need to be seen. Watch out, watch out. Now, SEEN has the goal of providing essential support, training, and resources to post-secondary educators and child-serving professionals, equipping them to better serve neurodivergent learners. In spring of 2023, Dr. White-Smith was recognized for her community engagement by the San Diego Business Journal and the San Diego Black Chamber of Commerce as one of the top 50 Black leaders of influence. Yes, I said top 50. Now, a fun fact, and demonstrating her commitment to being a phenomenal leader, she took up salsa dancing to help her learn to become a better leader. Y'all, we're going to talk about that a little bit later on, okay?
It's a whole story.
It's a whole story. Okay. As a single mom whose daughter is a sophomore currently at USD, Dr. White-Smith is a Black woman and a former foster youth who brings a powerful perspective to leadership that centers on justice, identity, and transformation in education. We are headed for a great, great conversation, y'all. Again, welcome. As you say, your students call you DK.
DK,
Watch
Dean
out.
Kimberly.
Dean
Watch out.
Kimberly. Okay. So let's start off with talking about what is your passion for leadership and making an impact?
So you talked a little bit about me growing up in foster care. I had an amazing foster mom. Two beautiful Black parents who grew up in the segregated South They were born in 1919 and 1917
Oh,
to give you
wow.
perspective.
Yeah.
So they were already grandparents when they decided to open their home to myself and to my brother Prince. And so my mom, Cleopatra White, that is her name.
That's awesome.
Because she was a queen.
Mm.
She just instilled in me by her example of what it means to be a leader in your family and the community, right? By taking in foster youth. She didn't know us. We weren't friends of the family. We were strangers, both me and my brother, and we're not biologically related. And my brother was labeled uneducable by our social worker. He was only 4. And so when they refused to remove the label, my mom was like, no, this is not what we're doing. We're not limiting this boy's opportunity for his future. She took us out of public school and put us in private school, put us in Catholic school, 1st through 12th grade. Did not tell the school anything about my brother's history. Just said that he might need some extra help. He graduated from high school, regular grades. And for that set me on a trajectory where I had to uncover these deficit perspectives of our people and our community and replace it, right, with the narrative of the brilliance that our people have to bring.
That is phenomenal. And what a great role model and direction for you. Would you say, and talk a little bit more about how that informed and fueled your passion for reframing the biases and the myths that folks put on our communities and our children?
Mm-hmm. So she planted a seed in me, right? A seed that took root and grew far past, her influence. My parents passed when I was 16, and so I was emancipated then and had been on my own ever since. And I began to observe what these deficit perspectives look like every day, right? So there are labels that we see in the school system. We see it in, when my brother was little, it was uneducable. Then that transformed into social emotional disorder labels, right? Learning disabled labels. And then we see it today. This cycle still continues when we see trauma, right? Instead of really drilling down and finding out what is it? What is the spark that these children have? What is the challenges that they really face, right? Like my brother. My brother came to our family. He was malnutritioned when he arrived. He came from a family that was extremely poor. He was underdeveloped. It turned out that he was deaf in one ear. And he had developed such significant skill at reading lips, at reading body language. We didn't even realize that he was deaf in one ear until 8th grade. He would, when we would go into testing, he would observe the tester and he knew which ear the sound was coming in. So it really got me to think about, what is the strategies that our kids are developing as a result of the impact of the weight of carrying these deficit perspectives on our backs? And what potential could we actually unleash if we unburden them with that and allow them the opportunity to grow, which is why I went into psychology and became an educational psychologist.
That's phenomenal. And the importance of, as I'm listening to you, acknowledging the skills that he grew himself and developed, right? And how that was not the focus area, right, of his brilliance.
That's right.
It was the label that folks put. And we know that happens in so many places, right, across so many spaces. Where the bias of or a deficit bias, right, and that gets stigmatized.
Yes.
Right?
It's a national phenomenon. It is
Yes.
something that we have research that shows the impact of mislabeling on our children. Blacks being the most impacted,
Yes.
Indigenous children and Latinx children
Yes.
being impacted by this mislabeling.
Yes.
So it's not something that is unique to any one state. But let's talk about California for a split second.
You got it.
So we know this happens in California. If you look at the data from California schools, you'll see the disproportionality of Black and brown kids in special education with these amorphous labels, right? So these labels that don't really mean anything, that's really rooted in probably what they see as behaviors.
Yes.
I want to tell you another fact that people don't realize. Dyslexia was not acknowledged by the state of California until 2018. Prior to 2018, when they passed the law that compelled schools to actually train teachers to work with dyslexic students, you had to be rich enough to afford the testing and get a medical profession, a medical professional to identify dyslexia. And then your child would be able to access the supports for that particular learning difference. So just imagine the generations of underrepresented, marginalized Californians who also experience dyslexia or some other form of neurodiversity and did not have access to the accurate supports or the accurate labeling of their learning difference, and went on to be siphoned into these particular routes that we now recognize as the school to prison pipeline.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
When we look at, in California, the number of prisoners that are there, in particular, folks of color, you also see illiteracy as a thread that's through their experience, right?
Yes.
And so it's a tremendous burden, but also an expense to us as a state, as a nation, to not find out how we could have redirected their experiences and their journeys.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, the illiteracy, and we know mental health challenges go right next to that. And with
Absolutely.
That, right?
We know that the traumatized brain, because, we're able to now take pictures of the brain. Neurobiology and neuroscience allows us a really entree into understanding how the brain functions. We now know that the traumatized brain exhibits the same patterns that students with learning differences actually have. And so trauma changes the brain. And just like trauma changes the brain, we also know that there are strategies and opportunities that could also retrain the brain.
That's right.
Right, and that's what the Center for Embodied Equity and Neurodiversity, that's their quest.
Yeah, it's very good, very good. So your passion for leadership, and I'm going to say it this way, that rights the wrongs and redirects systems, perceptions. Talk more about that passion.
So, as a Black woman that has learned and worked in spaces that weren't built for me, right? My mom did a great job of preparing me for that, right? Preparing me for what I didn't know, and the surprises that I would encounter, right, later on. And, she would tell me, baby, you have to be 2-3 times better than the person next to you, right, in order to make it in this world. So you need to keep your eye on the prize. You can't be, you can't go on any divergent paths. The cost is too high. And so I grew up and I experienced this over and over. I had 4.0 GPA in high school, and I took the bus from South Central to my high school, which was in an affluent area,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
with affluent children.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember looking around and seeing that other people were applying for college.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, this college thing, I need to be applying for college. Because, see, my parents, my dad was a baggage handler for Greyhound, and my mom was a soul food chef, right, retired.
Yes.
And so they didn't go to college. And, at this time I was living on my own, and I was like, okay, I need to get my act together and go to college. So I went to my advisor and said, hey, I'm going to need a college application because I'm going to college. And she looked at me without looking at my grades, without looking at my history, because I was in band, I was volunteering, I was doing all kinds of things in addition to being a scholar.
Right on.
And without looking, she said, people like you don't go to college. So why don't we talk about enrolling you in cosmetology school? And, and reflecting on that, I was like, I have friends that's really their mission.
Right.
That's their ministry.
Right.
They can do hair, they can do makeup, and they can make amazing, experiences off that. But that was not my gift.
Yes.
That was not my skill, right? Education was my gift.
Yeah.
That was the gift that Cleopatra gave me.
Yeah.
And so I found a good friend who went to the local high school who gave me an application. And I filled it out, and I got into every UC that I applied to. And I ended up choosing Berkeley. And so from there, right, understanding the cost of deficit thinking, right, that really has been the crux of my leadership journey, my leadership skill. And even in working with people that I mentor, right, I prepare them for, we talk about what are the negative narratives that either you've told yourself, that you accept about yourself, or that you hear other people say about you. And then let's really look for the kernels of truth that they are seeing that they're trying to diminish. Because that's what it is, right? When someone raises a deficit perspective about a person, it's because they're trying to diminish something that shines about them.
That's right.
Right? That is their gift. That is their ministry. They're trying to eradicate that piece of them, right, that shines. And so we work to figure out, to unearth that.
That's right.
Right, to peel the onion back from that deficit perspective and to really find the diamond.
I love that. I love that. Leaders, part of my role and goal is to mine the secrets of those LeaderSHYFT secrets. Leaders pay attention to their own biases that create deficits that really allow them to not see the diamonds in others. Right? Because in your story, I was thinking, oh, wow, like the bias that the person you went to had was not about you.
No.
They didn't know you, right? It was about that person, right? And their own mindset, right? That had been infected, if you will, right? And so part of that idea of really continuing to look at it and say, as leaders, we are challenged to constantly do self-reflection.
Yes.
Right? What are 2 or 3 other skills that you find to be important for leaders to have as they lead and mine, and I'm going to say it this way, navigate the minefields, right, of deficit thinking and bias?
Yeah. There came a point in time in my leadership journey where I came across a serious obstacle or a serious, bump in the road.
Yeah.
I was an associate dean at the time, and I was working under leadership at the time that did not believe in me as a leader, or did not believe in my direction of leadership. And I had the opportunity to go to a new institution to be the leader of the institution, right? And so for me, I felt unprepared to make that transition because I did not feel I had someone who invested in me to help me unlock. We think when we go to these new positions or these, higher levels, that there is a lock on the door, and someone is supposed to magically give you a key to unlock the door so that you can go in and be successful, right?
Yes.
And so when we don't have that mentorship, or we don't have that investment in us, we feel we're standing in front of the door and we don't have the key. And so I was determined to get the key for myself. Yeah. And that's why I took up salsa dancing.
Huh.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I needed to get out of my head.
Yes.
Right? I needed a strategy to completely get out of my head and to learn something that I knew nothing about. I'm really good at reading books. Right? And so reading self-help books, reading leadership books, that was not helpful.
Yes.
Right? I needed something else to demonstrate to me that I had the ability to conquer whatever challenge I set forth for myself. Yes. So I started taking salsa lessons, and it was an incredible transformative experience for me, because I think we really underestimate dance, right, as part of kind of liberatory experiences. And it's so culturally tied to the African American experience, to my experience as a Black woman growing up, right? I can tell you at every single important aspect of my life's trajectory based on what songs were popular at the time that's sung to me. Yes. So this seemed to be a good experience. And what I learned, right, as going into the experience as a follower, right? So typically you have a leader, a lead, and a follow, right? And so I decided that I was going to learn how to follow.
Yes.
And so, because I was like, the leaders have the hard part, right? They control the dance. But do they though, right? I learned that as a follower, I had as much control of the dance and responsibility to the outcome of the dance as the lead did. It was really important for me to learn the lead's signals, to understand the turn of the hand, what that meant, what he or she, wanted me to do in order to create kind of a line or beauty or to capture a particular rhythm. And it blew my mind, right? The opportunity to listen, to look, to experience somebody's body language. I could learn something even from the most inexperienced lead about how to make them look better, feel better, feel more confident, right? And that completely changed the game for me as a leader. Because followership in my leadership style is important. It's an important demonstration of strength, of adaptability, right? Of all these aspects that we take for granted in leadership.
So good. Another leadership secret. I think I'm going to be saying this a lot during this podcast. Effective leaders learn to be the best followers.
Amen.
right? And I so appreciate what you are saying around transferable skills, right? The ability to read the room, to read the person, the ability to read the signals and learn the signals, the ability to course correct when
That's
you
right.
miss the signals, right?
That's right.
Are so key to effective leadership. And I love that you took the initiative to put yourself in a different environment, right? And use a different set of senses and skills.
Vulnerability
Yes?
is
Yes.
key, right?
Yes.
You can't learn anything unless you admit that there are things that you just don't know.
That's right.
You don't know and you don't have control over. Making yourself or admitting to your vulnerability,
yes,
and opening yourself up to something new is key.
Talk about this idea of vulnerability as a key leadership skill for the future of effective leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. I think post-COVID, right, is a stark reminder of we don't know what we don't know. There are things that you can do to prepare yourself as a leader, but there's going to be curveballs that you just cannot predict or expect, right? And so I think vulnerability is important because you need to understand. I used to be an associate dean that was a micromanager. I needed to be everywhere and to do everything and have my finger in every pot, right? And one of the things that I learned quickly is that it's not sustainable.
That's right.
Right? And so really the work then began for me to identify the strengths in my team, right? What are the gifts, right? I like to say, what is your zone of genius, right? I feel like it's my responsibility to help those that I work with develop their zone of genius and to work in their zone of genius. And so that helps, expand, right, my ability to be different places, right, and to do different things. And to support other people.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
To grow the work.
That's right. That's right. Excellent. Excellent. I'm thinking about the lock, right? As you said, like people expect someone to be there with a lock to open the door. And I think also they sometimes expect someone to come and hand a manual, right? To say, and this is how you lead at this level, right? Let's play with a manual. What might be 3 to 4 mindset, skill sets, or behaviors if you were handing a manual to, and I'm going to ask 2 levels, a new leader to their position and a leader who's been in their position for a while? What might be some components of that manual that you would say to be effective?
I think number one on the manual, regardless of your where you are in your leadership journey, the number one thing I try to keep at the forefront of my mind every morning when I wake up is we as leaders need to allow space and grace for the people that we work with to change. Going back to this idea of labeling, as leaders, we read that you're supposed to go in and at night observe for 90 days, and in 90 days you're supposed to identify, key personalities and key this and key that, right? And then start making, decisions based on that. And that doesn't work for me. What works for me is to set a vision and a direction, right? So that would be number 2,
Yeah.
vision and a direction,
Yes.
right? Where is the ship going? What are our strengths as an organization? What are the things that we can lean in? What are the things that we can collaborate on, right? That's where Biggie for me came from. It's really going into SOLES and to identify all of the different strengths that the organization, that the programs, that the people bring to bear, right? And that helped me think about how to cultivate a program that would be sustainable, that we could support, because we had the expertise within us, right? So the vision and the direction. And so I try to think of it as a train. The vision and the direction is a train, and it sets on a course, right? And you are constantly providing opportunities and invitations for your people to get on the train, right? So whether you slow down, you build, pathways, whatever that might look like. Sometimes you have to completely stop the train and get the people on, right?
And some people off.
And some people off. And here is the thing. Not everybody is going to want to get on the train, right? There are going to be some people who are standing on the side and they are waving bye-bye, right? But here is the thing. I wake up every morning and I imagine space for those people who have said bye-bye, that today might be the day that they wake up and decide that they want to do it differently. That the way that they have been working or the way they've been doing things does not serve them. And perhaps today is the day that they make a change and they decide to get on the train.
Got it.
Right? And so that is how you eliminate this deficit perspective of people, right? We have this deficit perspective because you put the person in that box, you close the box, and that is it. You don't think about them anymore. You don't engage with them anymore, right? That the people in the penal system and the people in foster care and the people who, all along the journey who have had, serious challenges, right? You just put them in the box. You don't worry about them. But if we could all collectively think today might be the day that we have folks who want to do something different, who want to change their lives, who want to change how they're doing things, and find entree to allow them to participate, to come back into society, to come back into our organization. That is the transformative aspect of shedding deficit perspectives and really accepting asset-based approaches to our work.
Love it, love it, love it. That was awesome.
Awesomeness.
Awesomeness. Close up, Michael, close up.
You catch that?
Very good, very good. Talk a little bit about Biggie. And explain a little bit about what Biggie is, because I think it is so a great example of what you just said and described so eloquently and beautifully. Talk about Biggie.
Sure. So I like to lead by lived experience, in case that wasn't obvious. And so much of my work is around trying to find other people who have superpowers and to build, like a Justice League, right?
Yes.
And so when I moved to San Diego, everybody was like, you got to meet this Pamela Gray Payton. Pamela Gray Payton's amazing. You need to meet her. And so I reached out to her, and we were supposed to meet via Zoom, and my technology was terrible at the time. And so I said, look, can we just meet in person? I just want to meet and talk to you. And so we arranged to have lunch. And I said, look, I just, I looked you up. I've seen the changes that you've made. it's pretty remarkable what you were able to accomplish during COVID at the San Diego Foundation. And I just, this is my background, my experience. This is who I am. This is what I study. How can I help? And she looked and she said, wait, you're not here to ask me for money? I said, no, I see all the good work that you're doing. I'm saying this is who I am. This is what SOLES is. This is what we do. We do, teaching and teacher education. We do leadership broadly defined in the nonprofit sector as well as in school districts, and we do mental health, right? And so 360 degrees of potential support for our community. How can we be of service, right? Mm-hmm. And she said, well, I do have this critical community issue. So first of all, Biggie was defined by the community issue. Very good. We were able to develop a fund, the Black Community Investment Fund, and it was built based on the knowledge that the region had not provided the best supports for specifically our Black students. Our Black students in San Diego had traditionally been disadvantaged in schools. And so there's a whole historical aspect of that, community development, building of freeways, dismantling of communities, right? Yes. It's the same story in every city across the country that has, Black and brown folks, right, in critical areas. And she said, I've been asking people for a couple of years now to help figure out a way to address this problem, and no one has been able to come up with a clear solution, right? A viable solution. So we really talked about the data on student achievement in the area, and we saw that the drop-off was happening between 5th and 6th grade, right? That's a real critical juncture between the wraparound supports that we tend to see in, at the early childhood, elementary school stages. And then as they make that transition into middle school, it's very tough. Yes. Right? Yes. And so I used to work with a program called the Neighborhood Academic Initiative at USC, and they had a really excellent model of recruiting rising 6th graders, a group of them, working with them over the summer to build foundational supports, self-esteem building, cultural, historical perspectives, access to STEM, STEAM, literacy components and supports, and then keeping them and doing a Saturday Academy once a month throughout the academic year, and then continuing to build that, always recruiting the next year's class, but keeping and maintaining until you grow a full compendium of 6th through 12th graders, and then working with the university to allow them opportunity to apply to be members of the university freshman, pool. And so I said, but we can do a little bit more. We can go further, because SOLES actually offers wraparound supports. So we can provide supports that focus on mental health and mental awareness, right? We can do more self-esteem building, right? We can bring in partners to really kind of elevate, and cultivate the genius within those kids, right? Figure out what they're excited about, what they're good at, and explore that and expand that. We can work with their caregivers, whether it is grandparents, whether they're in foster care, whether they have, parents that are involved in their lives. We can work with them to help develop their advocacy skills, because so many times what I've seen in my experience is that you have parents or caregivers that want to be critical or central, but they're working 2 and 3 jobs, right? or they themselves did not complete their education journey and really don't know what they don't know, right? And so we can add all these additional components for our San Diegans, right? That I think would be critical factors in not changing just the students that come and take part of this initiative, but also the schools, school districts, and community members themselves. And so she fell in love with the idea. I got chills as we literally mapped it out on a napkin.
Yes.
And we brainstormed and came up with the name. This program is open to all students who experience disproportionality, regardless of, language origin, ethnic origin, racial origin. But knowing that our Black students are inordinately disproportionately impacted, we figured we needed a North Star. If we can support this particular demographic, everyone can benefit from it. So Black had to be in the name, and genius had to be in the name, because we're not helping those kids.
That's right.
Right? We are cultivating the genius in all kids. So that's where we came up with the Black in Genius Initiative, with the acronym of Biggie. We now have over 180 students participating in Biggie. We have our third cohort of sixth graders starting in the fall. So we'll have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade on campus.
So you described an ecosystem of deficit, bias, and disadvantage, and created an ecosystem that sees the genius in all kids.
That's right.
To counter that, I'm going to say, well-funded ecosystem. Historical, ecosystem.
Pretty well rooted.
Right? Yes. Yes.
And it's so well rooted, right? If we think about it, I have, visited classrooms with minoritized teachers who also enacted the same strategies and mindsets that disadvantage our own communities.
Absolutely.
Unintentionally, but it's what we've learned.
That's right.
Right? Everyone has been exposed to these particular stereotypes and negative or biased approaches to our communities.
Absolutely.
TV, radio, that shows my age. I guess what we stream now, right?
Social media.
Podcasts.
Right.
We're all exposed to this. And every day we are challenged.
That's right.
To reflect on that mindset and to make sure we're not enacting it ourselves. Every single day, it's something we have to commit to.
LeaderSHYFT Secret. Leaders constantly reflect on where, how, and when, and how much of the toxicity have we breathed in and are therefore breathing out, whether intentionally or unintentionally. We have to do the work to, I'm going to say, detoxify our own thinking, actions, mindsets, and good intentions are not enough.
That's right.
Right?
Yes. We talk a lot about how self-care, right? It's not a luxury, right? It's something that we have to embed as part of our work, because it's this detoxification piece that's important, right? We have to recognize that every day, right, we are the filters.
Yes.
We are literally and physically filtering this negativity, these deficit perspectives, all of these pieces, right? As we dismantle, right, these systemic, layers and barriers and obstacles, right?
Yes.
We are living, breathing filters of this. At some point, we have to, detoxify ourselves.
That's right.
Right? Of this work so that we can continue and sustain it.
That's so good. So let's talk about that mental health piece, right? How do you sustain and manage mental health for yourself? And then what are some ways that you find it important for leaders to do the same?
So I was blessed to have my daughter at the very beginning of this experience, right? I was finishing my dissertation when I gave birth to my kiddo, Chloe. And so from the very beginning, I always had to think about somebody other than myself. And I also, because of my personal experience growing up, I knew I had to take care of myself so that I could always be there for Chloe, right? And so that was something that was very important and integral to me from the very beginning. So when I started this journey, I was intentional about actually going out and meeting and collecting other sisters who were going through these experiences and challenges in academia with me. So I actually have a group of colleagues, friends, sister friends, my sister circle, who also experienced, academia, literally real time, same time as me. We've all had different outcomes of our journey, but we've all done it together. So being able to have someone to talk to, whether it is a group of folks, and we actually intentionally develop times to meet and have conversations. Right? So it's important. So whether you use, therapy, whether you use support networks and groups, having people to kind of talk through your biggest challenges, to give you feedback, to help you reflect, to make sure that you're taking care of yourself is critical and really, really important.
Very good. Very good. So having that circle, that village around yourself, to reflect back.
Yes.
Right? And to allow you to compare and contrast your own thinking against what's happening, but also a place to go, is it me or is it them? Right? And who will tell you honestly which it is.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely.
Very good.
Yes. We all experience times of high anxiety, of, emotionality. And so it's really important to have folks around you who will hold you down.
Got it.
And so the desire for me to be a better role model for my kid, always being Wonder Woman, is not sustainable.
Very good. Very good. So that idea of taking care of yourself in order to be able to show up and take care of others is a critical piece there. Let's talk about the future of leadership and the global leadership, right? I know that at SOLES you lead in a way that challenges the institution and supports the institution in preparing global leaders as well as preparing to impact leaders globally, right? Talk a little bit about that future of leadership as it relates to the importance of having a global lens.
Yes. So for me, interdisciplinarity has always been key to my work, right? So, when I developed myself, what did I do? I went out and went salsa dancing, right? I learned how to do salsa dancing. So bring in, music and the arts. And so, really developing cross-discipline strategies is important. That's why Biggie is a process that is a partnership, not just in SOLES, but we also partner with engineering and our NSBE students, so National Society of Black Engineering. Students are also a part of the Biggie experience as pod leaders. So Biggie is generational, intergenerational, right? So parents, caregivers, students, right, the littles, but also our 20-something year old, undergraduate, students as well, right? And so that intergenerational piece, but also interdisciplinary piece, right? And so I think also globally, right? So SOLES has focuses on global outcomes for our students. It's actually embedded and baked into all of our programs. You have to, in order to graduate from our program, have to have a global experience. And so through the Global Center, we provide many different avenues and opportunities to have global experiences, and also at various price ranges. So it's not something that is a heavy burden on the student to bear as well. We also have global programming, right? So we have partnerships with the University of Witwatersrand, Wits Business School in South Africa. We have partnerships with SETI's University in Mexicali in Baja California in Mexico. We have a dual degree program with SETI's. So an interdisciplinary dual degree program. So they get an MBA, so a master's in business administration from SETI's University. And then they also get a master's in leadership studies from SOLES. Yes. So so the global experience is something that is really quite baked into our experience.
Got it. It appears to me that you are phenomenal at developing systems. Talk a little bit about that.
So early in my career, I built programming that over time did not survive because it was not built into the system and able to perpetuate itself outside of me. So I don't believe in programming or supports that are built on personality, right, or individuals, right? And so we have to think differently about the way that we engage our supports and our programs, right?
Absolutely.
And so that is the intentionality with which I bring to SOLES and really try to think about, working across our different silos. Education tends to be so siloed, right?
Yes.
But more people that you can bring to the table to work through an initiative or a problem, the longer it's going to last, right?
So good. So good. It's also a counter to what so many leaders do, which is build a cult of personality versus building systems that live and have impact longer and not focused around their strengths or their personality.
So as a leader, you have to decide very early on what your goal is as a leader, right? If your goal is to propel you to be the top expert in X, Y, and Z,
Mhm.
so that people could come to you in order to gain, your expertise.
Yes.
Well, that's a choice, right? It's also a choice to center people and outcomes, right? For me, it's intentional to create opportunities for others,
Yes.
right? My mom, she had a personality. She was an amazing individual, but her goal was not to center herself. Her goal was to create opportunities for these two foster kids that she took into her home,
Good.
right?
Yes.
And so that is my purpose. That is my goal. Do I have particular strengths? Do I have particular skills? Do I have a particular personality? Absolutely, I do. Those are my tools, right, to help engage my larger goal, which is to transform systems that are broken and do not work for our communities, our students, and our families.
LeaderSHYFT Secret. Effective leaders focus on centering outcomes and opportunities, whether it's for themselves or others, but I'm going to say especially for others, right? And and I love what you said about then my tools become a part of the system to create the change.
Yes.
Right?
Because why else do I have them?
That's awesome. It is clear that the Dean and I could talk for hours. So we're going to call this episode 1 of the podcast. We will have DK, Dean Kimberly, back again for sure. Thank you all very, very much. I can't believe it's an hour that has passed by, right?
Wow.
And again, I know we could go longer. Thank you all for watching and staying tuned into this episode of the LeaderSHYFT Secret Podcast. It has been just a joy, and I'm thinking of a song that come to mind, but one's not coming. Ain't no stopping us now. That's what. Okay.
We're on the move.
Watch out! Watch out! And so, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Dr. Kimberly White-Smith.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones.
Such a pleasure. Such a pleasure.
Absolutely.
We're going to invite you to like, subscribe, and share our YouTube channel for the LeaderSHYFT Secret Podcast. Once again, thank you for staying tuned in to this episode. We'll see you soon.